The blizzard of the century was burying Black Ridge, and I was the only man who knew the route. But Braden Wilson, our new MBA-toting manager, didn't care about safety. He cared about his spreadsheet. He called me a dinosaur and fired me as the snow began to fall. 3 days later, with his richest clients freezing in the dark, he realized that you can't plow a mountain with an algorithm. Before this story continues, tell me, where are you watching from today and what's the temperature? I bet it's warmer than the frozen hell I left Braden in. You won't believe how fast his arrogance turned to panic. You can smell a real storm coming before you see it. It's not just the drop in temperature, it's a metallic tang in the air, like static electricity mixed with old pine needles. I stood by the bay doors of the maintenance garage, sipping coffee that tasted like burnt rubber, and looking out at the gray sky swallowing the peaks of Black Ridge. The radar in the dispatch office was a swirling mass of angry reds and purples. We were looking at 30 inches, maybe 40, in under 24 hours. "It's going to be a beast, Hank," Olivia said, walking up beside me. She was hugging a clipboard to her chest, her eyes wide behind her glasses. Olivia had been our night dispatcher for 6 years. She knew the mountain almost as well as I did, at least from the radio side. "It's a widowmaker, Liv," I corrected gently. "The wind is coming out of the north. That means drifts on Dead Man's Switchback are going to hit 8 feet by midnight." "Braden doesn't think so," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder toward the glass-walled office on the second floor. He's been on the phone with corporate all morning. He says the models predict a diversion to the east." I snorted, steam rising from my nostrils. "Models. He's looking at a screen in a heated office. I'm looking at the ridge. The deer moved down to the valley 2 days ago. The birds are gone. The mountain is telling us to batten down, and he's looking at pixels." I walked over to my rig. Old Bessie? She was a massive International 7600 with a jagged scar on the plow blade from the ice storm of 19. I patted the fender. I had spent the last 3 hours checking every hydraulic line, topping off the fluids, and inspecting the chains. "Hank," Olivia said, her voice dropping lower. "He's calling a meeting in 10 minutes. He's cutting the overtime authorization." I froze, my hand still on the cold steel of the truck. He's doing what? In a blizzard warning?" "He says the budget for Q1 is blown," she said, looking miserable. "He wants to run single shifts, no overlap. And he wants to use the new GPS routing system to optimize the paths." I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. The GPS system was fine for the suburbs, but up on Black Ridge, it didn't know that the guardrail on Turn 4 was rusted through, or that the wind tunnel near the summit could flip a truck if you didn't angle the blade just right. "He's going to get someone killed," I said quietly. "I know," Olivia replied, "but he won't listen to me. Maybe he'll listen to you. You're the senior supervisor. You've been here 20 years. 22, I corrected. I plowed this town out when Braden Wilson was still in diapers." The intercom crackled to life. It's screeching through the garage. "All drivers to the break room, immediately." Braden's voice was tinny and shrill. It lacked the depth of authority. It sounded like a man who was used to ordering lattes, not commanding heavy machinery in a crisis. I tossed the rest of my coffee into the slop sink. "All right," I said, zipping up my Carhartt jacket. "Let's go see what the genius has planned." As I walked toward the break room, I looked at the wall where we hung photos of the big digs, the historic storms we'd beaten. My face was in half of them, usually covered in frost, standing next to a mountain of snow. We were heroes in this town. We were the cavalry. But as I pushed open the door to the meeting, I saw Braden standing at the front of the room, tapping a laser pointer against a projection screen filled with pie charts. Nah, he didn't look at us. He looked at the numbers. And right then, I knew. This wasn't going to be a briefing. It was going to be a disaster. The break room smelled of stale donuts and nervous sweat. The other drivers, about 8 of them, were slumped in plastic chairs, looking tired before the shift had even started. Joey, the new kid, was bouncing his leg up and down, a nervous tic he'd had since he started last month. He was a good kid, but green. He'd never seen a whiteout on the ridge. Braden Wilson stood at the front, wearing a crisp blue button-down and a pair of loafers that cost more than my first car. He looked like he belonged in a tech startup, not a municipal plow depot. "All right, listen up," Braden said, not waiting for us to settle. "I've been reviewing the efficiency metrics from the last storm. Frankly, they're embarrassing." He clicked a button and a graph appeared. A red line zigzagged across the screen. Fuel consumption is up 12%. Salt usage is 20% over the projected baseline. And overtime? He let out a scoffing laugh. We are bleeding money on overtime. I raised my hand. I didn't wait to be called on. Braden, the last storm was heavy wet cement. You burn more fuel pushing slush. And you need more salt when it freezes overnight. That's not inefficiency, that's physics. Braden's eyes snapped to me. They were cold, dead eyes. Hank, I was getting to you. He clicked the remote again. A map of the mountain routes appeared, covered in jagged blue lines generated by a computer. This, Braden declared, pointing to the screen, is the new routing protocol. If the software has calculated the most efficient path to clear the roads, it eliminates redundancy. I squinted at the map. You've got Route 9, the summit run, scheduled for a single pass every 4 hours. Correct, Braden said smugly. Based on traffic density, that road sees minimal use after 8 p.m. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the linoleum. Minimal use? That's where the luxury lodges are. Mayor Thompson lives up there. Mrs. Vanderbilt lives up there. And if it snows 2 inches an hour, a 4-hour gap means 8 inches of accumulation. You can't push 8 inches on a 12% grade with the light trucks you bought. The algorithm accounts for accumulation, Braden dismissed, turning back to the screen. The algorithm doesn't drive the truck, I barked, my voice echoing off the cinderblock walls. Maze, you send Joey up there on a 4-hour rotation. He's going to slide right off the cliff at the switchback. You need a continuous loop on the summit during a blizzard. That's standard protocol. Braden set the laser pointer down on the table with a sharp clack. He leaned forward, bracing his hands on the table. Protocol, he sneered, is what bankrupts companies. You're talking about the way we've always done it. I'm talking about modernization. I'm talking about profitability. I'm talking about safety, I shot back. We have a duty to this town. We have a duty to the stakeholders, Braden shouted, his face flushing pink. And right now, the biggest drain on our budget is you, Hank. The room went dead silent. Joey stopped bouncing his leg. Excuse me, I said, my voice dangerously low. You're the highest paid driver on the roster, Braden said, ticking points off on his fingers. You claim the most overtime. You insist on using the heaviest, most fuel-inefficient rig. You undermine management at every turn. I keep the roads open, I said, and I keep these guys alive. Anyone can drive a truck, Braden said. The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. It's a steering wheel and a pedal. It's unskilled labor, Hank. Drivers are expendable. The routing software is the asset. The human element is interchangeable. I felt the blood rushing in my ears. 22 years. Missed Christmases. Frozen fingers. Back surgeries from the bouncing cab. All of it, dismissed by a man who had never changed a tire in his life. Expendable, I repeated. Yes, Braden said, straightening his tie. In fact, I think we need to prove that theory right now. Hand over your keys, Hank. We're moving in a new direction, effective immediately. Joey gasped. Olivia, who was standing in the doorway, covered her mouth with her hand. You're firing me? I asked, incredulous. 2 hours before a blizzard warning goes into effect? I'm terminating your contract for insubordination and failure to adapt to new protocols, Braden said smoothly, like he'd rehearsed it. Joey will take the summit run. I looked at Joey. The kid looked like he was about to vomit. You're sending the rookie to the summit? I asked. Joey is capable, Braden said, and he costs half of what you do. I looked around the room. The other drivers were staring at their boots, terrified. They had mortgages. They couldn't speak up. I didn't blame them. Fine, I said. I reached into my pocket. The keys to old Bessie were heavy. It was a ring I'd added to over the years, the ignition key, the padlock key for the tool chest, the fob for the gate. They jangled as I pulled them out. I walked up to the front of the room. Braden didn't flinch, but I saw him lean back slightly, as if he expected me to take a swing at him. I didn't. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of calling the cops for assault. I dropped the keys on the table. Thud. The sound was heavy, final. It sounded like a judge's gavel. You're making a mistake, I said, my voice steady. Not about me. I'll be fine. I'm talking about the mountain. You don't respect it, and it's going to make you pay. Braden picked up the keys with 2 fingers, like they were dirty. I think we'll manage without your Folklore, Hank. Please clear out your locker immediately. I don't want you on the premises when the snow starts. I turned around and walked toward the door. I paused next to Joey. He was pale, his eyes wide and watery. "Joey," I said, keeping my voice low so only he could hear. "Watch the RPMs on the incline. Don't trust the GPS on the hairpin turn. Hug the inside wall, even if you think you're too close. The outside edge is soft." "Hank, I can't," Joey stammered. "You have to," I said. "Just be careful, kid." I walked out of the break room. I didn't look back at Braden. The walk to my locker was a blur. I grabbed my thermos, my framed photo of my late wife Martha, and my spare gloves. I left the company jacket. I stripped it off and hung it on the hook. I wasn't wearing his logo anymore. As I walked out into the garage, the big bay doors were open. The wind was howling now, a low moan that vibrated in your chest. The first flakes were coming down, fat, heavy, wet flakes. The kind that stick instantly. I walked to my personal truck, a beat-up Ford F-150 that had seen better days but ran like a watch. I threw my gear in the passenger seat and climbed in. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. I was 55 years old. I had just been fired from the only job that made sense to me. I should have been angry. I should have been panicked about my pension. But as I looked through the windshield at the swirling snow, I didn't feel panic. I felt a strange, cold calm. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. As I turned onto the main road, I saw the lights of the depot fading in the rearview mirror. Then I saw the yellow strobe lights of the plow trucks flickering against the garage walls, preparing to roll out. I checked my watch. 4:15 p.m. The sun was setting early behind the storm clouds. Braden had his spreadsheets. He had his GPS. He had his cheaper drivers. But as I drove toward my cabin at the base of the foothills, watching the snow begin to accumulate on the asphalt, I knew one thing for certain. By midnight, Braden Wilson was going to wish he had never learned my name. The drive home took 45 minutes instead of the usual 20. My old Ford F-150, which I'd affectionately named the Mule, fishtailed twice on the lower switchbacks, and that was just with 2 inches of slush on the ground. The temperature was dropping like a stone. The dashboard thermometer read 28 degrees when I left the depot. And by the time I pulled into my gravel driveway, it was flashing 22. My cabin sits on the north face of the valley, just below the tree line. It's a drafty A-frame I built with my own hands 30 years ago, back when my knees didn't pop every time I crouched, and my wife, Martha, was still alive to complain about the sawdust. Now, it was just me and the silence. But tonight, there was no silence. The wind was screaming through the Douglas firs, a high-pitched keen that sounded like a wounded animal. I stomped the snow off my boots on the porch, the wood groaning under the accumulation, and wrestled the front door open against a gust that tried to rip it off the hinges. Inside, the air was cold. I immediately went to the wood stove, crumpling up old newspapers. Ironically, the local Gazette with a puff piece about Braden Wilson's modernization plan, and tossing in some dry kindling. Within minutes, the fire was roaring, but the warmth didn't reach the knot of anxiety in my gut. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't make dinner. I walked straight to the corner of the living room where I kept my connection to the world. A Uniden Bearcat scanner, a CB radio, and a ham radio setup. I flicked the scanner on. The little orange backlight glowed in the dim room. Static hissed, then voices punched through. "Unit 4 to base. I'm getting no traction on Miller's Creek. The salt isn't sticking. It's blowing right off the road." That was Dave. He was a good driver, careful. If Dave was sliding on Miller's Creek, a relatively flat run, the upper ridge was going to be a skating rink. "Ace, base to Unit 4, Braden's voice cut in, clear and arrogant. "Stick to the route. The GPS indicates you are 7 minutes behind schedule. Increase speed to 35. I slammed my hand on the desk. 35? I shouted at the empty room. "On black ice? You idiot." I paced the floor, listening. The wind rattled the windows in their frames. Outside, the snow was changing. It wasn't the heavy, wet flakes anymore. It was the fine, stinging powder that blinds you. The kind that swirls in the headlights and creates a hypnotizing tunnel effect. I grabbed my binoculars and looked out the front window toward the town below. Usually, I could see the streetlights grid out the valley. Tonight, the lights were fuzzy halos, disappearing one by one into the white void. The storm was intensifying faster than any model could predict. that it was a flash freeze event. The wet slush on the roads was turning into a sheet of solid ice as the temperature plummeted. Unit 2 here. I'm stuck at the intersection of Main and Elm. Some tourist in a sedan spun out. I can't get around him without crossing the median. Base to Unit 2. Do not deviate from the geo-fenced zone, Braden commanded. Wait for law enforcement. Wait? I whispered. You don't wait in this. You plow around or you push them gently. If you stop, you freeze. I watched the clock on the wall. 6:30 p.m. The accumulation was already at 6 inches in the valley. That meant a foot on the ridge. And the summit run, the one Joey was supposed to handle, hadn't been touched in 3 hours. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, my hand shaking slightly. Not from cold, but from rage. And I was listening to my town get buried, and the man in charge was treating it like a video game where you could just hit reset. But you don't get resets on Black Ridge. You just get consequences. By 8 p.m., the mood on the radio had shifted from frustration to genuine fear. The banter was gone. The drivers were short, breathless. You could hear the strain in their voices as they fought the wheels of those massive trucks. The scanner was my lifeline, and it was delivering bad news in real time. Dispatch, this is Unit 6. I've got a jackknifed semi on Route 9 southbound. The road is blocked. I'm turning back. Negative, Unit 6, Braden barked. Route 9 is a priority artery. You need to clear the shoulder so traffic can pass. I can't see the shoulder, Braden, the driver screamed. It's zero visibility up here. I'm in a whiteout. There was a pause. Then Olivia's voice came on, softer, calmer. Unit 6, copy that. Stand by. Safety first, Jerry. I could hear the tension in the dispatch room through the silence between transmissions. Braden and Olivia were fighting for the mic. Then the call I had been dreading came through. Base, this is Unit 9. Joey here. The kid sounded terrified. His voice was an octave higher than usual, trembling. Go ahead, Unit 9, Braden said. Status report. You should be reaching the Summit Lodge by now. I don't know where I am, Joey stammered. I passed the old mile marker 10 minutes ago, but the road is gone. It's just white. Everything is white. The GPS says I'm on the road, but the truck is tilting left. My blood ran cold. Tilting left. If he was past the mile marker on the summit approach and tilting left, he wasn't on the road. He was on the embankment of Dead Man's Switchback. The camber of the road banked right. If he was leaning left, he had drifted onto the soft shoulder that hung over a 200-foot drop. Joey! I yelled at the scanner, uselessly. Stop the truck. Don't move. Unit 9, Braden said, sounding annoyed. Recalibrate your sensor. You're likely just on the crown of the road. Proceed with the plow down. We have VIP clients waiting at the lodge. I'm slipping, Joey whispered. I can feel the back tires sliding. Braden, I'm sliding sideways. Apply the salt, Braden ordered. Engage the differential lock. I did! It's not biting, Joey cried out. It's just spinning. The chains aren't grabbing. My eyes widened. The chains aren't grabbing? Those trucks were equipped with heavy-duty diamond-patterned chains. They could climb a vertical wall of ice. If they weren't grabbing, something was wrong with the equipment. Joey, listen to me, Olivia's voice cut in, urgent and sharp. Put it in neutral. Do not touch the brakes. Let it settle. Where are you exactly? I see the red reflector on the guardrail, Joey choked out. But it's above me. The room went silent. If the guardrail reflector was above him, he had already gone over the edge. He was hanging on the slope, held up only by the deep snow and friction. Unit 9, respond, Braden said. His voice had lost its arrogance. It was thin now, static. Joey, Olivia called. Nothing but the hiss of the storm. I stood up, knocking my chair over. I ran to the window. I couldn't see the summit from here. It was lost in the swirling clouds. But I knew exactly what was happening. A 20-ton plow truck was teetering on the edge of oblivion, driven by a kid who should have been plowing a parking lot, commanded by a boss who was worried about his quarterly bonus. I grabbed my jacket. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't sit here. I had to know. I needed eyes on the inside. I needed to know why those chains didn't hold. I reached for my phone. There was only one person who knew the machines better than I did. My hands were shaking as I dialed the number. It rang 4 times, 5 times. I was about to hang up and try her landline when it clicked open. Hank? Her voice was rough, like gravel in a mixer. I saw the weather report. I figured you'd be halfway up the mountain by now. Al, why are you calling me? I'm not on the mountain, Mac, I said, pacing my small kitchen. Braden fired me 2 hours ago. He what? The sound of a chair scraping against a floor came through the line. He fired the only guy who knows how to drive that beast. Is he trying to kill someone? He might have already, I said, my voice grim. Joey is up on the switchback. I was listening to the scanner. He went silent, Mac. He said the truck was tilting left and the chains weren't grabbing. He said the reflector was above him. Jesus, Mac breathed. The kid's off the road. I need to know what's going on, I said. You still have your back door into the maintenance server? Mackenzie? Mac Miller had been the head mechanic at the depot for 15 years before Braden pushed her into early retirement last month. Claiming her methods were outdated. What he didn't know was that Mac had built the depot's network from scratch. She knew every password, every back door, and every loophole. Give me 2 minutes, she said. I heard the clacking of a mechanical keyboard. Mac was a tech wizard trapped in the body of a 70-year-old grandmother who loved cigars. Okay, she muttered. I'm in the telemetry system, looking at Unit 9. Oh, Hank. What? I asked, gripping the phone tight. The transponder is active, she said, but the tilt sensor is registering 35 degrees. He's definitely over the edge, but he's stationary. The snowpack must be holding him. Thank God, I exhaled. But why did he slide? He said the chains weren't biting. I'm pulling the maintenance logs now, Mac said. The typing intensified. Then silence. A long, then heavy silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Hank, Mac said quietly. You're sitting down, right? Tell me. The log shows a work order from last Tuesday, she said. Authorized by Braden Wilson. It says, equipment liquidation, Class A chains. He sold the heavy-duty diamond chains to a private contractor in the city. I felt the blood drain from my face. He sold the chains? In February? It gets worse, Mac continued, her voice trembling with anger. He replaced them with budget fleet all seasons. He put light-duty cable chains on the inventory list, but they aren't even on the trucks, Hank. The manifest says they're still in the crate. Joey went up that mountain on rubber tires. Nothing else. He sent that kid to die to save a few $1,000s, I whispered. Oh, the realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. It was criminal. Hank, there's something else, Mac said. I'm looking at the GPS clusters. Unit 9 isn't the only one in trouble. Unit 4 and Unit 2 are stuck in drifts. But the summit? The lodge is completely cut off, and the comms log shows 3 missed calls from a satellite phone registered to Mayor Thompson. The mayor is up there? And Mrs. Vanderbilt, Mac added. She's been trying to reach the emergency line for 20 minutes. They've lost power at the lodge. The generator didn't kick on. Why didn't the generator kick on? I asked, though I was starting to dread the answer. Because the fuel maintenance contract was canceled, Mac said. That Braden switched vendors to a cheaper service that only refills on request. They haven't been up there in 6 weeks. I looked out the window. The snow was coming down harder now, a white curtain erasing the world. Up on that mountain, a dozen people were trapped in a freezing lodge. A kid was hanging off a cliff in a truck with no chains, and the man responsible was probably sitting in his office trying to figure out how to spin this for the insurance company. Mac, I said, my voice hardening, don't log out. Keep tracking them, record everything. What are you going to do? Mac asked. I looked at the keys to my Ford on the counter. It wasn't a plow. It couldn't move that much snow. But I knew where the wind tunnels were. I knew which ridges would be scoured clean by the gale and which would be buried. I'm going to get my gear, I said. And then I'm going to make a call. To who? To the only person who can authorize a rescue when the main roads are closed, I said. I'm calling the sheriff, and then I might need to borrow something of yours. My truck? Mac asked. No, I said. Your drone. If Joey is over the edge, we need to see how bad it is before we try to pull him up. Can you fly it in this wind? In 40-mile-an-hour gusts? Mac laughed, a sharp barking sound. For you, Hank, I'll fly it through a hurricane. I'll meet you at the trailhead in 20 minutes. Bring the thermal camera, I said. We're going hunting. I met Mac at the trailhead of the old logging road, a narrow, unpaved track that bypassed the main highway's lower switchbacks. And it was the only way up that wouldn't be clogged with spun-out tourists, But in this weather, it was a suicide run for anything less than a tank. Mac pulled up in her heavily modified 1998 Jeep Cherokee. It was lifted 4 inches, sat on 33-inch mud tires studded with illegal steel spikes, and bristled with antennas like a porcupine. She rolled down the window, a cloud of cigar smoke billowing out into the snow. "Hop in!" she yelled over the wind. "You're going to want to hear this." I climbed into the passenger seat. The interior was a cockpit of glowing screens and radio dials. On a tablet mounted to the dash, a waveform was spiking, an intercepted signal. "I tapped into the localized repeater for the Summit Lodge," Mac said, tapping the screen. "The generator failed 20 minutes ago. The backup battery for the comms system is dying. Listen." She turned a dial. The static cleared, replaced by a voice trembling with a mix of fury and hypothermia. I recognized it immediately, Mrs. Vanderbilt. "Unacceptable! Do you hear me? I am wearing a mink coat and I can see my breath in the lobby. When I sue this municipality, I will own the snow you drive on." A calmer but clearly strained voice responded. That was Mayor Thompson. "Eleanor, please! Screaming drains your energy. They know we're here. The sheriff is coordinating." "The sheriff!" Mrs. Vanderbilt shrieked. "I called the sheriff. He said the plows aren't moving. He said the road is impassable." "I pay $40,000 a year in property taxes, Harold. The road is never impassable." "She's got a point," I muttered, staring at the screen. "It's never impassable, not when we run the stagger formation." But Braden didn't run the stagger. "Look at the thermal," Mac said, pointing to another monitor. She had launched her drone from the roof of the Jeep before I arrived. It was a high-end commercial unit, fighting the gale force winds, hovering near the tree line of the Dead Man's Switchback. The image was a grainy spectrum of blues and purples, representing the cold. But right in the center, hanging precariously over the black void of the ravine, was a hot spot of orange and red, the engine block of Unit 9. "He's still running," Mac said. "That's good. Keep the heat on. But look at the angle, Hank." I squinted. The heat signature was tilted at 45 degrees. The back tires were off the pavement, dangling in the air. The only thing keeping Joey from a 300-foot drop was the front plow blade, dug deep into the snowbank on the shoulder. "If the fuel runs out," I said, my stomach tightening, "the engine dies. The hydraulics lose pressure. The blade lifts." "And the truck goes over," Mac finished. "How much fuel does he have?" Mac typed a command into her laptop, querying the fleet's remote diagnostics. "Braden's efficiency protocols. He sent him out with half a tank to save weight. He's got maybe an hour of idle time left." "An hour," I said. "And the lodge is freezing. The mayor is trapped. Mrs. Vanderbilt is going to freeze to death in her mink." "And Braden is about to find out," Mac said, grinning fiercely. That his algorithm doesn't have a save rescue button. We watched from the darkness of the tree line as the tragedy unfolded below us on the main access road. The flashing blue and red lights of the sheriff's cruisers were painting the snow in eerie pulses. Braden was there, his sleek company SUV parked haphazardly behind a barricade. He was out in the storm, shouting at a sheriff's deputy, his arms flailing. Mac handed me the binoculars. "He's trying to send the tow truck up." I adjusted the focus. A massive heavy-duty wrecker, a private contractor Braden must have called in a panic, was inching past the roadblock. It was a beast of a truck, but I shook my head. "Wrong tires," I whispered. "He's got highway treads. He'll never make the first incline." "Watch," Mac said. The wrecker hit the first patch of true black ice. Right where the wind funneled through the valley gap, we saw the brake lights flare red. The truck didn't stop. It began a slow, sickening slide sideways. The driver panicked. I saw the front wheels lock, and the heavy rear end swung out. Crunch. The sound carried up the valley even through the wind. The wrecker slammed into the guardrail, blocking both lanes of the only road up the mountain. "And that," I said, lowering the binoculars, "is checkmate." The radio in Mac's Jeep crackled. It was the sheriff's frequency. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Miller. The recovery vehicle is disabled. Repeat, the road is completely blocked at mile marker 2. We cannot proceed. I'm calling it. We need air support." "Negative on air support, Sheriff," the dispatcher replied. "The ceiling is too low. No birds are flying tonight." I watched Braden through the binoculars. He slumped against the side of his SUV. The snow was piling up on his expensive shoulders. He looked small. He looked defeated. He pulled his phone out. the screen lighting up his terrified face. "He's out of moves," Mac said. "The mayor is trapped. The richest woman in town is freezing. His driver is hanging off a cliff, and he just blocked his own road." "He knows who to call," I said. "He just doesn't want to do it." "Make him wait," Mac said, crossing her arms. "Let him freeze for 5 more minutes." But I couldn't. I thought of Joey, alone in that cab, feeling the truck shift every time the wind gusted. "No," I said. "Turn on the CB, Mac, Channel 9, the emergency channel." Mac flipped the switch. "Breaker 19, I said into the mic, my voice calm and deep. "This is Hank Thomas. I'm monitoring the situation at mile marker 2. Looks like you boys got yourselves in a bit of a pickle." Silence. Then a frantic voice cut through. "Hank, is that you?" It was Braden. He sounded like a drowning man finding a piece of driftwood. "Hank, where are you? We have a situation." "I can see the situation, Braden," I said. "You blocked the road with a highway wrecker. You sent a kid up the mountain on summer tires, and you've got the mayor freezing in the dark." "Hank, I need you to come in," Braden pleaded. "I need you to drive the backup rig. We need to clear the blockage and get to the lodge." "I'm fired, remember?" I said, cold. "Drivers are expendable. Use the GPS." "Hank, please!" Braden's voice cracked. Joey is going to die. The mayor is screaming at me. I don't know what to do." I looked at Mac. She nodded. "I can get them out," I said. "But we do this my way, and it's going to cost you." "Name your price," Braden said immediately. "Double time, triple time, just get down here." "I'm not coming down there," I said. "I'm at the trailhead of the old logging road. It's the only way up now that you've blocked the main artery." "The logging road?" Braden stammered. "That hasn't been plowed in 10 years. It's a goat path." "It's a back door to the summit," I corrected. "And I know where the ruts are, but I need equipment. My pickup won't cut it." "I'll send a truck to you," Braden said. "No," I said. "Your trucks are useless. You sold the chains, Braden. Mac told me." Dead silence on the line. The sheriff must have been listening because I heard a deep and angry rumble in the background. "Here is the deal," I said, leaning into the mic. "I have a contract in my hand. Mac is typing it up right now. You are going to authorize a freelance emergency extraction." Okay, authorized," Braden said. "The fee is $50,000, I said. "50,000? Braden shrieked. "That's extortion. That's the price of a human life in a mayor's lawsuit," I said calmly. "And one more thing. I need access to the impound lot behind the depot." "The impound? Why?" "Because that's where you put old Bessie's original tracks," I said. "The half-track treads we used for the blizzard of 2006. You threw them in the scrap heap because they were unsightly. I need the sheriff to break the lock and helicopter them to the coordinates I'm about to give you. Wait, no air support. Sheriff, can you get a snowcat from the ski patrol?" "This is Sheriff Miller," a new voice boomed. "I can get a cat to the trailhead in 20 minutes. Hank, you get that boy off the ledge, and I'll drive the snowcat myself." "Braden?" I asked. "Do we have a deal? 50 grand, deposited into my account right now. Mac acts as escrow." I could hear Braden hyperventilating. He was watching his career evaporate, but he knew the alternative was a manslaughter charge. "Deal," he whispered. "Just go, please, just go." I hung up the mic. Mac hit enter on her laptop. "Wire transfer pending," she said. "He's desperate." I looked out at the storm. The wind was shaking the Jeep now, rocking 2 tons of steel like a cradle. "It's not about the money," I said quietly, zipping my jacket all the way up. "I know," Mac said softly. "Oh, but it'll pay for a nice retirement. Now get out there. I'll guide you from here." "I'm not going alone," I said, looking at the back of the Jeep. "I need you to run the winch. You're the only one who knows how to feather the tension without snapping the line." Mac smiled, lighting a fresh cigar. "I thought you'd never ask. Let's go save some rich people." The snowcat roared to life, a guttural mechanical growl that vibrated through the soles of my boots. It wasn't old Bessie, but the sheriff's tactical rescue vehicle, a bright orange piston bully with tracks wide enough to float on powder, was the only thing that could climb the logging road tonight. Sheriff Miller sat in the passenger seat, his knuckles white as he gripped the grab handle. "You sure you remember the trail?" "Hank!" he shouted over the engine noise and the screaming wind. "I can't see past the hood ornament." "I don't need to see it," I yelled back, wrestling the twin-stick controls. "I can feel the ruts, The suspension tells you where the hard pack is. We were crawling up a 20-degree incline in a complete whiteout. The headlights were useless, reflecting off the wall of snow like high beams in fog. I was driving by memory and the terrifying tilt of the cabin. To our left was a rock face. To our right, a sheer drop into the valley where the wind howled like a banshee. "Mac, give me a telemetry check," I radioed. "You're drifting 3 feet toward the edge," Mac's voice crackled in my earpiece, calm as if she were knitting. "Correction, 4 feet. The wind is pushing the tail. Crab walk it left. Da Hank." I gritted my teeth and pulled the left stick back, spinning the left track while powering the right. The machine shuddered, sliding sideways on the ice before the cleats bit in. We lurched back toward the safety of the rock wall. "Jesus," Miller breathed. "You guys do this for $20 an hour?" "We did," I muttered, until Braden decided we were overpaid. It took us 40 grueling minutes to reach the summit plateau. The wind up here was ferocious, stripping the snow down to the bare, black asphalt in patches and piling it into 10-foot drifts in others. We saw the lodge first, a dark shape against the gray storm. No lights, just a tomb of expensive timber and stone. "Go for the lodge first?" Miller asked. "No," I said, swinging the snowcat toward the south ridge. "The lodge has blankets. Joey has nothing." We found Unit 9 exactly where Max said it would be. It was a terrifying sight. The massive yellow plow truck was hanging off the edge of Dead Man's Switchback, aimed down at a 45-degree angle. The only thing keeping it from plummeting 300 feet was the front plow blade, which Joey had desperately jammed into a frozen snowbank. The rear wheels were spinning slowly in the air. The engine was coughing, fuel starvation. "Joey!" I screamed into the radio. "Joey, don't move! We're here!" I maneuvered the snowcat behind the teetering truck. Miller jumped out, fighting the wind, carrying the heavy steel winch cable. I stayed at the controls, keeping the cat anchored. "Hook it to the rear frame," I directed Miller. "Not the bumper. The bumper will rip off." Miller crawled on his belly across the ice, and it's the wind trying to slide him over the edge. He managed to loop the hook through the main chassis rail and locked it. He gave me a thumbs up and scrambled back to the cat. "Mac, take up the slack," I ordered. "Slow. If we jerk it, the momentum will snap the cable." I gently reversed the snowcat. The cable pulled taut with a sickening twang. The plow truck groaned. Metal screeched against rock. "Come on, Bessie's cousin," I whispered. "Pull." Inch by agonizing inch, we dragged Unit 9 backward. The rear tires made contact with the road. The cab leveled out. As soon as all 6 wheels were on solid ground, the door flew open. Joey tumbled out, falling into the snow, sobbing. He scrambled away from the edge on his hands and knees. Miller ran to him, wrapping him in a thermal blanket. "I got him!" Miller yelled. "He's hypothermic, but he's alive." "Get him in the back," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Now, let's go get the mayor." The drive to the lodge was short. When we burst through the front doors, it was like entering a mausoleum. The guests, about 20 of them, were huddled around a cold fireplace, wrapped in curtains and rugs. Mrs. Vanderbilt stood up as we entered. She was wearing a fur coat that probably cost more than my house, and she looked furious. "It's about time!" she shrieked, her breath visible in the freezing air. "Do you know who I am? I will have your badges. I will have your jobs." I pulled my scarf down, revealing my face. "You can't have my job, Mrs. Vanderbilt. I was fired 4 hours ago." She blinked. "What?" "I'm here as a private contractor," I said, my voice hard. "Courtesy of a $50,000 emergency fee your friend Braden Wilson just authorized. Now, grab your purse. We're leaving." Mayor Thompson stepped forward, looking shaken but dignified. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Hank," he said quietly, "you saved us. But why were you fired?" "Ask Braden about the chains," I said, turning back to the door, "and ask him where the fuel money went." The storm broke at dawn. The sky turned a brilliant, innocent blue, illuminating a world buried in white. We had caravanned the VIPs down the mountain in shifts using the snowcat. By 8 a.m., everyone was gathered in the warm, fluorescent-lit break room of the depot, the same room where I'd been fired less than 24 hours ago. But the dynamic had changed. Braden Wilson sat at the head of the table, but he wasn't looking at spreadsheets. He was looking at Sheriff Miller, who was standing by the door with his arms crossed. Mrs. Vanderbilt was sipping scorching hot coffee, her eyes darting between Braden and me. Joey was sitting in the corner with a blanket still shaking, holding a mug of cocoa Mac had made him. "This is a misunderstanding," Braden stammered, his perfect hair now disheveled. The severity of the storm was unprecedented. The equipment failure was unfortunate. "Unfortunate," I said, leaning against the wall. "Joey almost died, Braden." "It was driver error," Braden snapped, finding a shred of his old arrogance. "He panicked. He didn't engage the chains properly." Mac walked in then. She was carrying a ruggedized laptop and a small, grease-stained orange box. She slammed the box onto the table in front of Braden. "Do you know what this is?" "Braden?" Mac asked, her voice gravelly and calm. Braden stared at it. "No." "It's the vehicle telemetry unit from Unit 9, Mac said. "The black box. Every truck has one. It records throttle position, braking, GPS location, and mechanical resistance." She opened the laptop and spun it around so the mayor and Mrs. Vanderbilt could see. A graph was displayed on the screen. "See this flat line?" Mac pointed a callous finger. "That's the traction coefficient. It flatlined the moment Joey hit the incline. That means there was zero grip." "Because of the ice," Braden cried. "No," Mac said. "Because of the rubber. The sensors also logged the equipment loadout. The truck's computer was looking for the resistance of the Class A diamond chains. It didn't find them." She clicked a file. An invoice popped up. "And here," Mac said, "is why. This is a digital receipt from City Scrap and Salvage. Dated last Tuesday. Sold 12 sets of heavy-duty plow chains. Price $6,000. Signed Braden Wilson." The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the vending machine. Mrs. Vanderbilt slowly set her coffee down. She turned to Braden. Her face wasn't angry anymore. It was something far worse. It was predatory. "You sold the safety equipment," she whispered. "My life was in danger because you sold chains for pocket money?" "It was a budget reallocation," Braden squeaked. "I was going to use the funds to upgrade the break room coffee machine." "You embezzled city property," Mayor Thompson said, his voice deep and authoritative. "And you endangered the public, Sheriff." Sheriff Miller stepped forward, unclipping a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Braden Wilson, I'd stand up. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As Braden was marched out, passing the very drivers he had called expendable, he looked at me. His eyes were pleading. "Hank," he said, "Hank, tell them. I was just trying to modernize." "You did modernize us, Braden," I said, taking a sip of my own coffee. "You showed us exactly what happens when you treat people like parts in a machine. The machine breaks." The heavy metal door clicked shut behind him. Mrs. Vanderbilt turned to me. She pulled a checkbook out of her ruined mink coat. "Hank," she said, "I believe I owe you a heartfelt thank you, and perhaps a conversation about how this department is run. I don't work here anymore, remember?" I smiled. "I'm retired." "Not for long," she said, uncapping a gold pen. "It's been 6 months since the blizzard of the century. The snow is gone, replaced by the lush green of a mountain summer. But things around Black Ridge are different now. The lawsuit was swift and brutal. Mrs. Vanderbilt didn't just sue the municipality. She went after the private equity firm that hired Braden. The settlement was historic. The old plow company filed for bankruptcy within weeks. Which brings me to where I am right now. I'm standing on the porch of my cabin, looking down at the valley, but I'm not looking at the old depot. I'm looking at a new steel building just off the main highway. The sign out front, freshly painted in bold blue letters, reads, "Highland Response and Rescue." I didn't just retire. With the $50,000 rescue fee and a substantial settlement for wrongful termination, I bought the fleet at the liquidation auction. I bought Old Bessie back for pennies on the dollar, but I didn't stop there. I hired Mac as my operations manager. She runs the dispatch from a state-of-the-art command center that she designed herself. No more blind spots, no more dead zones. And Joey? He's not a rookie anymore. I spent the last 3 months training him personally. We drove the switchbacks in the mud, in the rain, and in the dark. I taught him to feel the road through the seat of his pants, not a GPS screen. He's my lead night driver now, and he respects the mountain. Braden is currently serving 3 years for embezzlement and reckless endangerment. I heard he's working in the prison laundry. I hope he realizes that, even there, if you don't maintain the machines, things get messy. I took a sip of iced tea and leaned against the railing. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the ridge. You know, looking back, it's easy to say I should have seen it coming. But that's the thing about loyalty. It blinds you. I spent 20 years thinking that if I did my job, kept my head down, and kept the roads clear, the company would have my back. That was my mistake. I ignored the red flags. When they started cutting corners on maintenance, I grumbled, but I didn't walk. When they brought in a guy who looked at people as numbers, I thought I could just outwork his incompetence. I was too trusting. I thought my experience was my armor. But here is the lesson I want you to take away from this. Experience is only valuable to people who respect reality. To a man like Braden, my experience was just an expense he wanted to cut. If you're in a job where they start talking about efficiency while taking away your safety gear, run. Don't wait for the blizzard. Do keep a record of everything. If Mac hadn't saved those logs, Braden might have spun his way out of it. Do trust your gut. If the situation feels unsafe, it is. No job is worth dying for. Don't rely on loyalty from a corporation. Your loyalty belongs to your team and your family. The company is just the logo on the check. I own the company now. And the first rule in my employee handbook? If the driver says it's unsafe, the truck doesn't move. It's simple, it's expensive, but it's the only way to survive the storm. If this story of justice touched you, please like, share, and subscribe. We've got more tales from the ridge coming soon, and trust me, yes, the snow always reveals the truth eventually.